So, dear colleagues, good morning and welcome on my stream. It is quite comic and almost absurd situation for me. I would never have guessed it that I would ever have streamed my English seminar to YouTube. However, the reality is much more powerful than our imagination. So, as J.F. Kennedy said when announcing program Apollo, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. So, my aspiration is a little bit similar as GFK's. Mainly, I understand this grave and dark situation as an opportunity to push my limits a little bit. For that reason, in spite of obvious insufficiency of my language skill, I will try harder and I will continue in our seminar in this way. If necessary, for many weeks, if necessary, alone. Yo, let's go. So, we finished the topic of Homeric cosmography last week. So we can turn our attention to the next subject, namely the Homeric concepts of body and soul. However, let me first shortly resume the last seminar in the form of questions and answers. So, it is my PowerPoint slide. And first question, what does preserving phenomena, in Greek diasodzainta phenomena, mean in Greek tradition? So, the possible answer could be, beginning with Homer, the Greek scholars try withholding, capturing or fixing our sensory experience with ideal geometric shapes and mathematical forms. Without fixing our experience such way, they were deeply convicted that all sensual experience is worthless and prone to escapes. Preserving phenomena means to project seen into regular mathematical forms. Such a projection will later be of fundamental importance for Greek scientific thinking. So, the second question. What is the overall shape of Homeric word and what are its main parts? The Homeric word is in its form, so to speak, a sphere with strict symmetry and tripartite division. There are heaven above, earth in the middle, and underworld below. The earth is a flat disk. The vertical dimension of the world, dimensions of what are the same as the dimension of an earth disk. At the top is Uranus, a celestial metal world that delimits orbits of the sun and all the stars. And the bottom is the Hades. Next question. Next question. What is What is the shape of Earth in Homeric cosmography? Earth is a flat disk with a radius of about 2000 kilometers and a total area slightly larger than today's Canada. Or next questions. Where is the river Oceanus depicted on Achilles' shield in Iliad chapter 18? The land is located in the middle of the disk and is surrounded by a wide flowing stream, the Oceanus River. The Oceanus River should be distinguished from the sea in Greek Pontus. And Oceanus is stretched along the entire outer edge of the Achilles shields. It presents the limits of the earth, which is depicted on the Achilles shields. Achilles shield. What is the role of Oceanus in Homer's cosmography? Oceanus is the source of all waters. It is also the outer edge or ultimate limit, in Greek, peras of earth. Its stream forms its solid framework and unites the world in a uniform shape. The Homeric perception of Oceanus as an extremely deep stream that flows around the whole earth as is closed into itself is almost universally considered to be one of the main sources of the emerging Greek scientific cosmology. So the sixth question: what is the difference between contrary opposites and contradictory opposites? Give some examples taken from description of Achilles' shields in the book 18 of Iliad. Contrary opposites and contradictory opposites means the difference is following. Contradictory opposites are those where division is in some sense asymmetric. For example, humankind was traditionally divided into Greeks on the one hand and barbarians on the other hand. However, the barbarians themselves include the Persians, Egyptians, Thracians, etc. Contrary opposites, on the other hand, seems to be equal and symmetric. For example, we can make contrary division of humankind, distinguishing men and women. Examples in the 18th book of Iliad would be following: city in peace and city in war, cattle breeding and sheep breeding, vintage and corn harvest, wine and bread, and etc. So, next question. Why is the underworld totally absent in description of Achilles' shield in the book 18 of Iliad? So, underworld or afterlife as such has no meaning, no value, even relevance for living humans, notably for the Homeric heroes. And penultimate question: for what reason is the dance of boys and girls and the figure of singer culminating of the depiction of the human world on Achilles' shield? What is the opposite of this motive? The opposite is the labors and fights. Divine singer in the middle of the dancers embodies the music, in Greek musica, in the sense of all fine arts. So, the last question: what is the best translation of the word logos in the relation to the Homeric word as presented in the Achilles shield in the book 18 of Iliad? For the whole complex tissue of relationships and dependencies or interdependencies that together forms the world, the Greek invited the word logos. This word can be translated as word, as sense, as thought, etc. However, if we want to understand what the Greek primarily understood it is best to translate logos as proportionality. In my point of view, as proportionality. So, that was short summary of last seminar, and now we can proceed with the Homeric psychology. So, nowadays, when we asked what a human being is, we usually answer with either a more or less poetic description. For example, a laughing monkey, or a crown of creation, an image of God. Or we try to enumerate its parts. For example, a human being consists of soul and body, though we may not be absolutely sure that something like the soul actually exists. That is, the soul is somewhere in us, possibly around us, or somewhere else. Whatever our attitude to the existence of soul may be, we understand the concept very well. For example, we may not be convicted of the existence of the soul, but we understand what psychology is, and we may consider psychology as useful and quite mighty science. But it is necessary that we understand himself as a composite of soul and body. Is the division of man something evident, banal, of self-evident, or it is just an ephemeral phenomenon of our culture? It's quite important and crucial questions, I think. So let's take another look to the Homeric epics. In Homer, the word soma, in Greek body, wait for a minute please, and here we go. That is the list of the Greek word. So the first one, the word soma is never used in Homer when Homer is talking about a living person. In Homer, soma always means a dead corpse, as well as the living person is concerned. Homer speaks, on the one hand, of limbs, in Greek, gia, in the sense of moving hands and bending feet, which give a person his speed and agility. And on the other hand, Homer speaks of melee, which are the limbs in the terms of strength, providing their muscles. If Homer wants to say that someone's body was pierced, for example by sword, he used the word hros, which means skin in the sense of boundaries of body, not derma. We know the word derma, for example, in the composite dermatology, and derma in Homer means skin that can be washed. However, derma is not a boundary of body. The boundary of body is hros for Homer. It is quite difficult for us to fully understand similar mentality which has no idea, concept, even a word for the body as such. Expressions like giai or melea are all in plural and seem to refer to what we understand physical body today. Similarly, the Greek art of that time shows similar understanding of the physical body, not as a unity, but as a kind of aggregate, composite or sum of parts. It is only in the art of the 5th century BC that we encounter attempts to portray the body as an organic unity, whose parts are interrelated each other. In the previous so-called geometric period, the body was merely a combination of independent parts that were assembled together in different ways. Preserved drawing of person from the geometric period of Greek art are in some respect similar to drawing of children. However, they are at least in one important regard fundamentally different. When small children draw a person, usually draw its body first and then attached the head, arms and legs to it, as we can see on this figure. The figures of geometric art, on the other hand, do not have any torso, but consist only from mea kai giai, that is, from muscular limbs, hands and feet that are linked together by overly large shoulders or hips. On this figure you cannot find any torso. Definitely this part of the body is not torso, but that is very overdraw it. Shoulders, very muscular shoulders, part of legs, but not torso, as you can see on this childish drawing. So, of course, in part, this difference is due to the coffin that was worn at Homeric time. But even if we disregard this influence, it cannot be denied that Greeks of the Homeric period seem to have seen the human figure in a really strange way. Its limbs are easily, as it were, separable or detachable. The joints are very large. The muscles are huge. These drawings are likely to express strength and agility, while children's drawings, on the other hand, rather express the unity and, so to speak, physical coherence of a person. Thus, the Greeks of Homeric era were unable to grasp the body as a unity and the whole, neither in language nor in their visual arts. This is quite important. If we don't have a name for a thing, we can't even grasp the thing by thinking. We don't see that thing as if it doesn't even exist for us. Of course, the Homeric Greeks physically looked like us, but they thought of his body, of their bodies, quite differently, as a set of limbs that could escape or strike someone or rise and throw something, etc. They did not know and understand their bodies as a unity. This unity was not seen until later, but as soon as got its name, it seemed to exist. Its existence then quickly spread and became, so to speak, a banal, ordinary matter, which was subsequently reflected in both thought and fine arts. The Homeric view of man thus emphasizes his mobility rather than the compactness that his body acquires only at the moment of his immobility caused by his death or unconsciousness. So, let's turn our attention to the problem of the Homeric soul. It is very similar as the case of Homeric soul, the situation of Homeric body. Homeric Greek assigns individual psychic phenomena to different parts of a human body. For example, cowardice is placed in the legs, anger in the breast, while thinking and decision making are usually a matter of the head or diaphragm. Diaphragm means a membrane between lungs and stomach. According to some scholars, for example, famous German scholar Frankl, the question of mental structure of a Homeric person is essentially non-Homeric. Why? Because the source of human identity is ergon. It means an act that is primarily bodily gesture or manifestation. Each body organ can develop its own energy. However, at the same time, each of these organs also represent the entire person of the hero. In Homer, therefore, we do not find one word that can be translated as a soul. In the Homeric dictionary, there is a similar empty space or lacuna, as in the case of body. The word psyche, which in later Greek more or less denotes what we still understand as a soul today, the word psyche in the Homer has no connection with thinking or feeling. For Homer, psyche is a force that keeps a human being alive, living at the moment of death, and flies to Hades. From the Homeric text, however, it seems not to be possible to elucidate the function of the soul during life, even whether it is somehow manifested during life at all. At the end of Iliad, the soul of deceased is compared to smoke. So in Iliad book, penultimate book of Iliad, the soul of the dead make a strange sound, in Greek trisoussai, and this sound is translated into English as rustling, moaning, or squeaking. And in one passage in Homer, this sound is related to rustling of bats, of wings of bats, based on the notion of exhaling the soul, as well as the etymological affinity of the psyche with the Greek verb psycho. Psycho means I breathe. Many interpreters thought that the Homeric psyche was primarily the breath of life. The Homer's gods have no soul. It may sound strange, only if we understand soul as a psychic center. Undoubtedly, the gods have very richly developed psychological character, with strong will, with strong and passionate desires, with ideas which are ultimate driving force, or so to speak impetus, which is moving the whole Homeric world. However, as we already know, Homeric psyche is not as associated with any psychic qualities. As opposed to mortals, the life of immortal gods is not tied to the mortal body, and therefore it is self-evident that they cannot have any psyche. Therefore, presence of psyche is the important difference between humans and gods. The words that would describe some of the dynamism we associate associate with the so today are timos and nous. Timos and nous. Roughly speaking, timos is a source of motion and unrest in Homer, while nous is the cause of imagination. All mental phenomena, as thinking, feeling, anger, passion, or desire, are divided between these organs and a couple of others less significant. However, the difference between timos and nous is not clear, as it could seem to be. For example, today we think our heads are the seats of thought, while the head is the seat of emotion. But we are not able to distinguish too clearly between them. For example, anger, hate, or vengeance can be kept in our hearts as well as in our heads. For Homer, timos is usually the seat of joy, the seat of pleasure, the seat of love, sympathy, or anger. However, it cannot simply be described as the seat of emotions. For example, Menelaus recognizes in his timos that he must come to the assembly because his brother, the chief king Agamemnon, is in trouble. So, in the second book of Iliad. Therefore, timos is a seat, in this passage, timos is a seat of intuition or thinking as well. Therefore, timos is roughly equivalent of emotion or will. Some interpreters consider Homeric timos as a breath evaporating from the bot, or a quick breath accompanying excited emotions. Other interprets say timos is the seat of the life energy of a person. Timos is probably, like other Homeric psychic organs, placed in the chest, and its activity controls human action and decision making. Timos is often affected by external influences. Homeric man used to be very attentive to his timos, sometimes used to talk to it, sometimes have to tame it. Homer knows not only human timos, but attributes timos also to animals, to horses, to boars, to deers, etc. Both animals and humans must die, and their death is occasionally described as the departure of timos in Homer. Well, what does it mean? It means that the boundaries between psyche and timos in Homer is a little unclear. These concepts are very close each other. Let's turn our attention to another concept, the concept of nous or nous. Nous is sometimes located in timos. The nous, which only occurs in the singular in Homer, and therefore each person has only one timos, only one nous. Only one nous is derived from the verb noein. The verb noein means to understand or see in true colors, and it's often associated with the verb idein, which means to see in the sense of physical vision. However, noein represents the type of vision that involves not only the visual perception but also the mental process that goes hand in hand with the visual perception. So, nous is a sort of mental eye or the eye of the mind, so to speak. It is an organ of clear images, an organ that allows clear, unobstructed vision, a vision that goes to the point of the matter. It covers the semantic field of the words mind, intelligence, or even, again, soul in English. In later tradition, namely in Plato, nous becomes the intellectual part of the soul and themos the hot-blooded part. But it is not the case with Homer epics, where the concept of soul as the unifying entity is missing, is totally missing. In Homer, nous has no bodily meanings or representations, which is very interesting, and he also does not ever speak of nous, of animals, unlike the soul and also unlike the themos. This dynamism, it does reserve it only to humans and gods. By the way, nous of Zeus, nous of the supreme god Zeus, is almost adverbally the strongest or largest. And another word for similar psychic dynamism is Fran. Fran, interestingly, Homer uses the word Fran more frequently than nous. More than 300 passages can be found in both epochs. And Homer uses this word, the word Fran, more often in plural, as Franes, which is a result of its relation, friends relations, to its bodily functions. Therefore, some scholars interpreted Fran or Franes as a diaphragm or pericardium. Pericardium is area around heart. The Fran can be associated also with lungs or with an unspecified organ of emotion situated somewhere in the chest area. In Homer, some psychic power is situated in Franes, mostly themos, but also care, ether or nous itself. Unlike nous, Fran or Franes are not associated with recognizing of the obscure and invisible, but very often Fran is also associated with what we could call reflection in the modern language. In Homer, people turn to their Franes when they need to make a decision. So people and gods think about something in their Franes, which are mediators or even, as it were, the companion in their consideration. Franes are also associated with speech and even soothsaying. For example, Apollo, the god Apollo, knows all things in his Franes. And even gossiping. The Franes, it's quite strange. The Franes could be associated with speech, with soothsaying, and with gossiping in Homer. For example, the coward Heraclitus knew many rude words in his Franes, so in Iliad. the book second. Humans, as well as gods, have essentially the same phrenes. The phrenes is a place of their intellectual, emotional life. But unlike nous, there is no difference between divine and human phrenes. Phrenes may also be found in animals. For example, in faun. Faun means young little deer. So in Iliad book 4. Phrenes can be found in wolf, in lioness, etc. Phrenes may change or even deteriorate over the course of human lives. For example, Agamemnon's phrenes turned black in first book of Iliad. Priam, the old Trojan king, Priam used to be famous for his phrenes, but as his wife Hecuba said in the Iliad book 14, they are lost now. He is very old and quite senile. Finally, phrenes are active only when a person is alive. The shadows of the dead in Hades have no phrenes, with the only exception, as we will see later, of the seer Tiresias. Now we are at very odd era in the development of European thinking, as it is described in Homeric epics. We don't know how long ancient peoples had thought about themselves this way, but it cannot be ruled out that this conception emerged perhaps in the Neolithic Age or even earlier. Around the 5th or 6th century BC, however, there is a sharp reversal. There is a new canon. There is a new canon of art, a new political arrangement, the Greek polis, and also a completely new type of man, respectively, a new understanding of what a man, of what a person could be. A person begins to become a unique individual, a person in the modern sense of the word. The philosophical reflection followed very soon. Heraclitus of Ephesus was apparently the first who philosophically developed this new concept of man. For him, the psyche is the soul of a living man, and such man consists of soul and body. Heraclitus' soul has its own properties and abilities that radically differentiate it from the body and its physical organs. It sounds almost modern. At the same time, Heraclitus took another step when attributed logos to the soul. We are already familiar with this ambiguous word. We encountered it during the explanation of Homeric cosmology, where it was used in the sense of fundamental, of essential proportionality of the world. However, for Heraclitus, it means rather divine speech, or divine word, or even oracle. But above all, it is something that can be found and seen in the world. It is fundamental interplay of opposing forces that together create the world, or more precisely, the very foundation or order by which this interplay comes to being. By attributing the logos to the soul, Heraclitus wants to say that this order is not inherently hidden and inaccessible for man. Man has access to this order through his soul. He can try to understand this order by his thinking and to articulate this order in his speech. Let us now look at the implication of this shift for the soul in 3 ways. I have prepared for you 3 Heraclitus fragments taken from the edition of Kahn. So, the first one, Heraclitus in the fragment 35 in Kahn edition says, "You will not find out the limits of the soul, limits of psyche, by going, even if you travel over every way, so deep is its report," in Greek logos. What does it mean? The soul is said to have a deep, in Greek, bathis logos, deep report, deep logos, or it has a certain depth assigned to soul. This sounds pretty modern. We probably all understand when it is said that the soul is deep. On the other hand, if we say someone has a deep hand or deep eye, it would sound comic and strange, but the adjective can be used of the soul without much hesitation and problems. Why? Because we are convicted, as Heraclitus was, the soul has its own dimension, and the soul is incommensurable with other organs, which are essentially bodily. The soul, unlike the other organs of which man consists, reaches infinity. The soul's depth cannot be measured. We can see that spiritual and physical dimension of human are disconnected by Heraclitus. Man has 2 levels, mental level and physical level, which together form the unity of human being. So, let's turn our attention to the second fragment. In addition to being deep, the logos of soul is, as it were, common property, as Heraclitus said in the fragment third fragment. Although the account in Greek logos is shared, most men live as though their thinking were a private possession. So the logos is called common in Greek xenos. Thus it can mediate between 2 or more people in the sense of sharing ideas or even in the form of dialogue. On this basis, we can say that 2 people are of the same mind or have a common view of something. Homer would be able to say something similar at all. It would be as nonsense for him as to say that 2 people have a hand or eye in common. Therefore, this characteristic of soul also presupposes a profound distinction between physical and mental. It's quite a very important step to modern understanding what the soul is and what the man is. So, let's proceed with third fragment. The fragment 51st. The third specific characteristic of the soul can be found in following fragment. To the soul belongs a report, the logos, that increases itself. What does it mean? It means that the soul for Heraclitus is considered to be a kind of foundation from which some development in the terms of ground expansion of deepening is possible. It would be absurd to give such characteristic to the eye or hand. Of course, in Homeric poems, it is possible to increase physical or mental or even spiritual strength, but this is not happening on its own, as it were from inside. For example, by education or training. But this increasing happening from outside by the intervention of deity. A god is always able to give, although temporarily, his favorite hero an additional courage or strength, for example, to save him from a dangerous situation. So Apollo gives strength to Trojan Glaucon to try to save another Trojan hero, Sarpedon. Similarly, Homer does not know anything via personal decision. If a hero considers two equal alternatives, God's intervention ultimately plays a key role in his decision. So, we can see that Heraclitus' understanding of man is quite different from Homeric and much more closer to our understanding. Another significant shift in understanding what a soul could be and therefore what is the human occurs in the next century or a little bit later. It takes place in Athens in the second half of the 5th century BC. That is at the time when the new concept of the soul has been established. Oh, dear colleagues, it is fascinating how great intellectual boom had occurred in Athens in this time. It was a small time measured by our criteria, today's criteria. The number of free citizens at this time in 5th or 4th century BC fluctuated between 20 and 35,000 at most. There were also 10,000 settled foreigners and at least 100,000 slaves, but only 20 or 35 at max free citizens. On the other hand, between 2 to 3 generations, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Pheidias, Socrates, Plato, Aristophanes, Thucydides, Pericles were born in Athens, and in addition there were many other personalities who were not Athenians by birth or Athenians natives, as Herodotus, Hippocrates, Aristotle or Anaxagoras, but they lived and worked in this small, is comparably small city. So, in the second half of the 5th century, the question stood as follows. The question concerning the soul and man stood as follows. What should be done to make the human soul as good as possible or to achieve its arete? Arete means excellence or goodness of the soul. However, at this point, we need to be very careful. Arete is usually translated as a virtue, and we tend to understand it in the sense of certain ascetic ideal. However, in this old eye of European tradition, arete is nothing but another expression for the good, for to agathon in Greek. Or it means the soul with arete is very good or excellent soul and nothing more. However, arete, unlike Heraclitus, logos, does not belong exclusively to the soul. It was a general characteristic of excellence or suitability that could be attributed to things. For example, an axe. An axe could have arete if it had a sharpened blade, and therefore it could be effectively used for chopping wood. Arete therefore means to be perfect or to be excellent, denoting such a way the quality of existence of some being or even thing. Arete makes a thing what it should be, gives it the ability or power to do its characteristic work, to do its ergon. While we are able to determine what is precisely the arete of X, what is arete of the soul is much more complicated question and hard to answer. To determine what is the characteristic word of the soul, it means to determine what the characteristic ergon, characteristic work of man could be. In that time, the soul was conceived as our true self. For Plato, the soul is our true self, or the ruling principle in man, and this principle can rule both rule the man well as badly. The place suitable to the characteristic word of soul is related to another change that has occurred in this period, namely the emergence of Greek polis, the Greek city-states, the new political organization, kind of democratic organization of the polis of the city, and Greek polis is built not on hierarchical or aristocratic principle, but on democratic principle. What does it mean? It means free citizens, free and wealthy man, nobody else, or equal each other in the terms of their duties and rights, and the polis is governed not by a single tyrant or a narrow oligarchic group of people, but true consensus of all free citizens, which is established in the councils and the courts. At that time, political activity within polis is seen as the highest expression of humanity. That is an activity in which man is truly and most human. The seeing for arete, for excellence of soul, must therefore be understood in particular in relation to public political activities of this time. A man tries to achieve excellence of his soul, arete, in order to be more effective and better respected in public assemblies and courts. Not surprisingly, it attends teachers of Arete emerged very soon, claiming they would prepare young people from wealthy families for their political careers. The main part of their teaching was rhetoric. Traditionally, these teachers were called sophistae. It means sophists, literary sages, and the emergence of sophists is related to another emancipation of human individuality that occurred at that time. This change is often called the Greek Enlightenment. It's quite strange, Greek Enlightenment, but it is understandable. Sophists were extreme rationalists who, like their modern counterparts, thought the reason was omnipotent and able to illuminate it and explain everything. At the same time, they held that everything could be challenged or defended by a suitable composite logos. Laws of police, ritual of religions, customs, etc. The work of sophists brings about some important consequences. First, logos, now emancipated from its meaning of the fundament of word order, became the sole or only arbiter in human affairs. Secondly, a skillful use of the logos makes a man powerful and influential. Not surprisingly, the traditional characteristics of the sophist was they are men who are able to make the weaker logos, the weaker speech, stronger. Ton eto logon kreito plein. In the Greek, this famous phrase from the Apology of Socrates. So, at the same time, we can see a fundamental anthropological turn. Things are as they appear to man. The decisive factor is not how things are, but rather the view or the subjective perspective from which we observe them. One of the sophists, the very famous sophist, maybe the most famous sophist of all times, Protagoras, formulated this approach in his famous Maxima Homo Mensura. And he said, of all things, the measure is a man. Of the things that they are, of the things that are not, that they are not. What does it mean? The man, as an individual person, becomes the center of the universe, and therefore of religious claims are rejected. With their cultural and educational optimism, the sophists created the just opposite understanding of life that we can find in Homer, where the ultimate momentum is not man, but a divine fate. And the fate's guardian and executors. It means they are gods, Homeric gods. Yeah? The other side of Greek sophistic movement, however, was the ultimate emphasis of purely formal education. Sophists taught the art of persuading others and winning in disputes, and they did not care at all whether their art would be used by their pupils for good and just things in war, courts, or assemblies. The aim of sophists was solely to equip the young man with the skills to succeed regardless of all circumstances. At least in its perverted forms, the education of sophists could easily make them unscrupulous, cunning, and all-capable deceivers in the eyes of their critics, such as authors of Attic comedy, Aristophanes for example, and mainly in the eyes of Plato. The Socrates was born to this situation, and with Socrates, philosophy took a profound turn. Socrates' philosophy was a sharp reaction to all sophistic tendencies. Socrates' criticism of sophistic movement included both its external manifestation, namely the teaching for money, the overall ethos, the sophist, the anthropocentrism of sophists, and their extreme rationalism, and even methods. Socrates' education was proceeded through sort of philosophical dialogue. With Socrates, philosophy takes new dimension and its new depth. Although Socrates himself never wrote anything, and we learn about his thinking only from the reference of his disciple, named Plato and Xenophon. For Socrates, the problem of arete is conceived in a new, a quite different way. The ultimate goal of human life, or ultimate aim of human life, is not success in an agonistic struggle, as in public gathering or law court, but the ultimate aim, ultimate goal of human life is dwelling with the good, dwelling with the agathon. The good itself, which Socrates has in mind, refers to his ontology, founded on the distinction between layers of ideas and layer of their imitation, namely material things. Arete, excellence of soul, is for Socrates rather a result of the achievement of life happiness. However, according to Socrates, the happiness cannot be achieved by pursuing indirectly. We are to strive not for happiness, but for the good itself. And happiness is the result of such appropriate striving, or better say, seeking. Happiness cannot be fought out in political or whatever struggle. However, it is not contradictory to possibility to establish polis, political order, where the goods itself would be a common goal of all society. Therefore, according to Socrates, arete whose teaching the sophists promise cannot be taught at all. In Dialogue Manual, Socrates said, arete was a divine gift. Nevertheless, man can and man should take care of his soul. Is the task of primary importance. Man should seek the goods itself and guide his soul with respect to the good itself. Only in this way, arete can be achieved. According to Socrates, arete is inherent to indivisible unity of four components, which are piety. It means proper relationship to what transcends man. It means the proper relationship to the gods, to the divine. The second component is justice. Justice is proper relation to the community, to the polis. The third component is moderation, in the sense of proper relationship to oneself. And the last component is courage. Courage, in the Socratic sense, means proper relationship to one's own finality, to our death. To sum up, on a soul who has the good itself in mind, or the good itself has arete. Such soul dwells with the God. Such soul dwells with the good, with the agathon, as with the last goal of man, and thus achieves the meaning and fullness of life. Socrates is not a teacher of arete, but he teaches a happy life. And it's important. Dear colleagues, our time is nearly up. Thank you for your attention and see you next week. Bye bye.